Hello everybody and welcome to Vigilant Citizen. Thanks for joining me outside again. It is, I don't know, in the 60s, maybe the 70s. It was 70s a couple weeks ago despite it being very wintry and giving the appearance of being cold, but it's been pretty nice lately, so I'm excited to be outside again and not shivering. I got some coffee though, just try to help keep me warm if it gets cold again. So I read a lot of books, and a lot of times I'll find a book that sounds interesting, and before I even know anything about it, or before I've read it before, I'll actually just go out and buy it, even if it's on a recommendation from somebody else. And I tend to do this with non-fiction books. I don't really go out and buy fiction books on a whim. I buy a book if it sounds like it has an interesting idea. And when I first got into a management position at the company that I work for, I started just consuming lots of books that were about leadership and the different thought processes of being a leader, and how to think about it, and what's the responsibilities that come with it, and how can you best move forward with those responsibilities in mind. One of the books I picked up was the Navy SEAL Art of War, which is a pretty short book. It's like, I don't know, that big. So it only took me maybe a week to read it, and I read it maybe 3 years ago. But there was a line in there was a concept that really stuck with me for a long time, and I think it was repeated in some other books that I read by Jocko Willink, called and Leif, I might butcher his name, but Leif Babin, his co-host, they have their own podcast. And those books were called Extreme Ownership and The Dichotomy of Leadership. Really good, really interesting. They're also from the perspective of Navy SEALs, and they take their experiences as leaders during the Iraq War and how it can help you in the world of business. And not just business, but how can it help you to be a better leader in any position or any organization that you might be in. Yep, I'm outside, so I've got the joy of the dogs and of the traffic behind me. Now the trees are dead, all the leaves have fallen, so the traffic is just making all the noise. So maybe I should rethink this. Not that it wasn't making all the noise before, but now it's just getting right through the trees and right into the microphone. But anyway, that line that I thought was interesting, that concept, was just simply embrace the suck. And the chapter in the book of the Navy SEAL Art of War is pretty short. It's like a page and a half. And it doesn't go too deeply into it. I think Jocko Willink goes into it a little bit more. And I got to be careful about that. I'm not entirely sure that I read it there. I know I've read it somewhere else too. But the whole concept is that sometimes you can't avoid things that are painful. You can't avoid situations that are uncomfortable or in some sense painful. Now, in the Navy SEAL Art of War, they're mostly talking about painful physical experiences, such as doing covert operations and having to run through the sand. And he makes a joke that, well, at least it's not raining, so suggesting that, hey, it could always be worse, so let's take it the way we've got it right now. And I thought that was an interesting concept, because when you're thinking about it in a non-physical sense, when you're in an uncomfortable situation, if you're just trying to avoid it and you're trying to pretend like, hey, I wish this wasn't happening, or if you spend too much time thinking, I really wish this wasn't happening, gosh, I wish I were somewhere else, that does you no good. That does you no good. You have to embrace the situation that you're in, and you have to think through what are the next steps to get through with it. This could be anything from trying to survive an arm triangle in jiu-jitsu, which is one of the more challenging positions that I find myself in when rolling, or if you're at an uncomfortable party in which you're expected to maintain some level of social etiquette, because that's the way we do things in society. So whether you find yourself in a physical situation or cultural situation or any sort of situation that you just don't like, don't sit there thinking about where you should be or where you could be or what you should be doing or how did I get here. The problem is you're here now. Embrace it. Get ready for it. Move forward. Move through it. Sometimes the only way out is through. You're not going to get around it. If you can get around it, cool. But a lot of times you can't get around it. And also, in some sense, this is easier said than done, but believing that surviving this situation is going to make you a more resilient person, whether it's physical or mental, and in some sense embracing it and being thankful for it, being thankful that you've been put in this position, because now you can learn how to be a better person overall. I know that's not easy, especially when you're in the moment and things are really tough and you don't know the best way through and you're a little bit lost. I think a lot of us might be feeling that way in our current sociological situation that we find ourselves in. But I think it's okay to be thankful for it and to think that, okay, I have an opportunity to show what I'm made of and to show that I can get through this and I can come out on the other side and I can look back and say, you threw everything you had at me, world or people or whatever. You threw everything you had at me and I survived it. And not only did I survive it, but now I'm thriving and I can do it again if I need to. Beat that. So it's really important to think of it in those terms, because if you don't, you will die. You will wither away and you will die. I think we've seen a lot of people in the last year and a half, 2 years, who have just withered and collapsed in on themselves because they could not handle the mental fortification needed to move through some of the challenging things that we've seen over the past 2 years. Instead of thinking, what can I do to survive this? They were thinking, and I don't mean from a literal sense, they might have been thinking about that too much. Instead of thinking, how do I continue living my life and prioritizing my mental health and getting through this, they were thinking, how do I not die? And believing all the lies they heard, believing everything they heard, that the world was ending, that we're all going to die, that to catch a cold or the flu is a death sentence, and just stressing themselves out over that and thinking, how do we get here, and blaming other people for their situation. No, it is better for you to just take ownership of your own life and where you are, embrace the suck, move through it, find the path, and win. And survive. That'll make you a better person. Guaranteed. All right, my message is short today. I think that's pretty on point. But if you disagree or have additional thoughts, leave a comment below. Send me an email. You can find that in the description of the video. And other than that, I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.